I never knew that I had such a high tolerance for stress until this one day while I was in graduate school in the city of New Orleans, Louisiana. It's one of the greatest cities in the world. It's one of my favorite cities. I go there as often as I can. A lot of crime in New Orleans. I lived in the French Quarter. And if you know New Orleans at all, the French Quarter is the old district. You know, that's the party area for some people. It's the historic architecture district for others. You know, it depends on what you're interested in. And I lived a block off of Bourbon Street. And even if you haven't been, you've heard of Bourbon Street. I told you I have a high tolerance for stress, and I never appreciated that until one day I was walking home with my roommate from the grocery store, and it's like the middle of the day too. It's like 3 or 4 in the afternoon. Nobody's on our street, and we're right outside of our apartment. As we're starting to turn, or to face our apartment, a guy pops out from behind a parked car, and he's got a gun in his hand, and he says, "Give me your money." Like we're being robbed. We're being robbed right in front of my apartment. Which, by the way, I feel like if you make it home, that's base. You know what I mean? Like. I feel like you should have robbed me down the block, really. But I'm being held up at gunpoint right outside of my apartment. This is the first time this has ever happened to me. It's the only time it's ever happened to me. So that's relevant because I didn't know how I would react. Right? It's a pretty extreme, stressful situation. Well, my roommate reacted like a lot of people, I think, would. And it's understandable. My roommate reacted by becoming really overwhelmed with stress and anxiety. He became completely flushed. He started to perspire, and you can see the anxiety on him. He was shaking. You know, all of his movements were shaking. In fact, he dropped his bags of groceries, and he was just shaking with his hands shaking, slowly reaching into his pocket. All he could do was reach in his pocket, grab his wallet, and hand it over to the guy. And he was also stuttering in his speech. He was just really, really overwhelmed with nerves. And I remember looking at my roommate going, wow, he is really freaking out, right? Because I remained completely calm. I remained very calm. In fact, I remained so calm that I began to negotiate with my mugger. Sure, you can have my money. That makes sense. You know, you've got a gun. You're holding it in the middle of a city street. You've taken a substantial risk. I feel like that risk should pay off for you. You can have my money, no objection, no argument. You know, my money's, consider it yours. But here's the thing, I want to keep my wallet, all right? My wallet's got my ID in it, it's got my credit cards, which you're not going to be able to use in 5 minutes from now. It's got my car registration, you know. That's a pain, it's a hassle to have to replace those things, you know. If you agree to let me keep my stuff, you can have my money. And I said, those are my terms, all right? Now, here's the thing about robberies. First of all, it's stressful to be held up at gunpoint. Some of us might have that experience too. I would imagine it is also stressful to hold somebody up at gunpoint. And my mugger, my gunman, was also pretty stressed out. And he's kind of shaking with the gun in his hand, and he's just saying, just give me the money, just give me the money, repeatedly. Just give me the money, just give me the money. And I'm saying, okay, now calm down, just relax, all right? You can have my money. There's no argument, you know. I just want you to agree to let me keep my stuff. And we went back and forth about 3 or 4 times having this conversation, right? Eventually, he calmed down. And he says, okay, well, that sounds reasonable. And I pulled my wallet out, and I took the money out of my wallet right in front of him, you know, and I handed it to him. And then he says, well, can I look inside your wallet to make sure there's no more money in there, you know? And I thought, yeah, that makes sense. You know, I mean, maybe I could have tucked away some big bills behind my driver's license. So I said, okay, well, look, I'll let you go through my wallet, but you have to promise you're not going to run away with it. And he says, I promise. So I hand him my wallet. He starts flipping through it, you know. And when he's satisfied there's no more money in it, I didn't have a lot of money. I was a broke graduate student, you know. When he's satisfied there's no more money in it, he gives it back to me. I say thank you. He's like, you're welcome. And then I say, well, hey, can my roommate get his wallet back too? And he's like, yeah, I guess so. So he gives it to my roommate. My roommate just says thanks, and the guy says, oh, you're welcome. And then he says, well, I guess I'll be going. I'm like, just leave, man. It's not like we're friends now, you know, you're robbing us. Get out of here, you know. And that was when I realized that I had a much higher tolerance for stress than most people. First of all, let me address something. My mother is almost definitely in the audience today. There might be multiple mothers in the room today. And yes, Mom, I know what you're thinking. No, my life is not worth that amount of, or that amount of money is not worth risking my life. You know, so I realize that. The point of the story is this: we don't have to be in control of a situation. We just have to feel like we are. If that guy wanted to shoot me, I was just going to end up taking a bullet. So I had no control over that situation. But my brain reacted as if I did. Our brain has to respond as if something we can do will influence the outcome of this situation. Now, and here's what happened internally in our brain. So I'm going to compare myself to my roommate in this scenario. We both were exposed to the same stimulus. Both of our amygdala responded by interpreting whether or not it was threatening. His decided it was a threat, and that decision sent feedback to other parts of his brain that initiated those physiological responses. Those physiological responses, in turn, were interpreted by his frontal cortex as the emotion of fear. And because he experienced such an intense form of fear, it put that cognitive restriction on his behavior. And he didn't have the ability to do much more than just simply hand over his wallet. On the other hand, my brain got the same stimulus, probably saw it as a threat, but then my prefrontal cortex said, you know what, I've got this under control. And it suppressed the stress response, allowing myself to not feel the negative emotion. It allowed me to have the ability to analyze the situation a little bit more and come up with a mutually beneficial option.